Welcome to Coast Talks. Today's topic is Blue Tourism through an Indigenous lens. I'm Christina Clarke, the Executive Director of the Indigenous Prosperity Centre, which, like Coast, is an initiative of the South Island Prosperity Partnership. I'm joining you today from the beautiful lands of the Chiano First Nation, where I am a guest. My father was Irish, and my late mother was Inuit Métis from Labrador. But I gained my expertise in Indigenous economic development through my work with Songhees First Nation, where I worked for 27 years, and I had the pleasure of working with one of our guests, Cecelia Dick. So I'd like to invite you, Cecelia, to please introduce yourself.
Ancestral Siam, Asa Hulat, Chesan at Lakongan. I said, good day, everyone. My name is Hulat. My traditional name is Hulat. I am from the Lakonga territories, specifically Songhees. And I am the tourism supervisor for Explore Songhees. Is that okay? It's
harvesting and weaving. And I'm a knowledge holder. Thank you.
Thank you. And I also read that you're an ethnobotanist when you're in your academic career.
Oh, yes. Thank you. I'm an ethnobotanist. That's my core training. So I know a lot of the traditional uses of native plants, if they're medicine, tools, or indicator species, or food. And I also do traditional salmon barbecues and traditional pit cooks.
Fantastic. And definitely I'm going to invite our staff at the SIP group with Coast, IPC, and SIP to partake in the tour that you offer, and also Songhees tours. And we really look forward to getting to enjoy learning from you and your work. Cecelia, is there anything you'd like to share about what Songhees Tours does?
Yeah, Explore Songhees is a walking tour, canoe tour. We talk about the traditional lands and territories of the Lekwungen people. Specifically right now is the signs of Lekwungen. There's 7 signs that are located in Victoria. We talk about the spindle whorls that are located in specific spots of our lands. And what we do is go and talk to the story that's there and the spindle whorls that are located on the lands. Butch Dick is the one that had created the spindle whorls, and he created those in honor of our grandmother. Butch Dick is my first cousin, and when he created those, he wanted to honor our grandmother, and because she used to be a famous weaver, she used to spin the wool. So it's a spindle whorl where they used to use the spinning wheel to do our wool. There used to be a Coast Salish woolly dog that was of these lands, but no longer exists, as it went extinct during the colonization. But on the spindle whorls itself that he created, there's actually stories and pictures that he had created on them. So we talk to those pictures that are on the spindle whorl and the specific area that they're in. So when we go out, there's so many content there that it actually helps for us to tell our story the way that we would like to have them told. And actually just giving people that core information that they seek when they come here as tourists, because they don't see us in the main core in town. They're just like wonder who we are and where we're at. So it gives Songhees that opportunity to come out and see and learn about the Indigenous people that own the lands here.
Yes. And in the future, people can look forward to opportunities for canoe tours.
That's right.
And Songhees Tours is in a developmental phase. And so right now what people can do is book you for some more of a specialized tour that's planned out specifically for the tour group.
Yeah, at the moment we are restructuring, but we're hoping to be open by mid-June. So you can find us at exploresonghees.com once our website is up and running again.
And in the meantime, people can find you on Facebook too, can't they?
Facebook or my cell numbers, or just reach me through my email for
Cecelia.
Songhees.
Cecelia.dick@songheesnation.com.
Yeah, and it's Cecelia, because
Thank
they
you.
have CECI here.
Yes. And JB,
CECE.
you can be found through Facebook, through the Native Plant Guy on Facebook, and you've got information there. And with your tours, are you doing it similarly to Songhees in the way that you'll put together a specialized tour on request for when someone reaches out to you? You kind of work with them to come up with what the offering will be and what the tour will be like?
Yes, and I have multiple locations, much like how the spindle wheels are set up in various locations. In the Songhees territory, I go to various locations within my territory, and I've been given permission from Songhees elders and knowledge keepers to go in and share, go into their territory and share Saanich knowledge. But when I go into other people's territory, I make sure that I let them know that I'm technically outside of my territory, and the knowledge that I'm sharing is Saanich knowledge. It's not knowledge to where we are. And I go into forests, into open meadows, on the beach, near the lake, on the mountain. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, it sounds really interesting. So one of the questions that we have for you, and I'll ask this of Cecelia, what do you think is different about an Indigenous tourism business compared to other types of tourism businesses?
The difference is that we are one of a kind right now here in Victoria, because we are the ones that are Indigenous, and people are seeking out Indigenous storytelling, anything Indigenous, right? Indigenous foods, culinary, tourism. It's huge right now. Everybody wants to learn about Indigenous people. So I find that it's so important, because we get that chance to talk about our nations, the neighboring nations, and we share these rights with each other. You know, there's an understanding between the nations, and we get to share, not our stories, but we get to share that we are neighboring nations, and how we proceed with good faith and understanding. So when we are out there, the difference between non-Indigenous and Indigenous tourism is that our stories come from way back. It's historical teachings, oral history that we have been handed down from generation to generation. And it's still here, it's still alive, and that gives us that opportunity to still share. And when we go out, it's amazing because people are interested. You know, they're thriving for more of that history.
Yes. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that, JB, and on what sets an Indigenous tourism business aside from another type?
In an Indigenous tourism business is a little bit different in that we go about teaching and sharing with our visitors that we use these resources and not exploit them.
Hmm.
Because there is a big difference between using and benefiting. Because when we use, it's not really using, it's more sharing because of traditional protocol dictating that we need to say our prayers
Mm.
for the plants and for the medicines, and then protocol dictating that we need to make an offering, and that offering changes it from being just strictly us taking to us sharing with
Mm-hmm.
nature.
Yes, and that resonates deeply. And it reminds me of something I saw the other day where there was a teaching that they were saying when you go to harvest cedar bark, if you shouldn't be able to reach your arms all the way around the tree. If the tree's small, then it's too young to take bark,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't want to hurt the tree. And you're working with the environment instead of against it. And that really is a difference between some of the Western ways of doing things, which have been quite destructive. And when you were sharing yesterday, and some of the things we were talking about some of the hard parts of this, like this colonialism has brought a way of life that is exploitative and harmful. And there are, your medicine gathering areas that have been destroyed, and that's
Mm-hmm.
painful. And there's anger about that. And that'll come out in a tour sometimes, that expressing that pain and that challenging people that what's brought here has been harmful. And we need to understand that if we're going to change our ways and heal our relationship to the land and our relationship all together with one another.
Yeah, I believe that too. You know, the harsh truths of colonization is just one of the facts that I I kind of put it out there in my tours. You know, these are the hard truths, is that they did not like the way that we lived because we still lived on Earth, the Mother Earth, and like we we liked our feet touching the ground because that made us closer to her. So just because they didn't like the plank homes that we lived in and they were building beautiful Victoria, they wanted to have another treaty in 1911, and they said, well, let's move them because we were living at the Delta, along the Delta side. If you guys know Victoria very well, the Delta Hotel, which is on near Johnson Street Bridge. So there, we were 5,000 people strong at one time. But due to the pandemics of the smallpox, we only survived about 300 in the end. And that was because our chiefs had moved us to some of the islands and kept us safe there until it was over. But we only survived about 300, and that's with the two nations. Now we're above again. Not as much as 5,000, but we're maybe just a little over 1,000 strong with the two nations. That's the Songhees and the Esquimalt. So I say Lekwungen, that's the two nations that own Victoria, the Songhees and the Esquimalt people. And that reaches right from Albert Head right into Cadbra Bay.
Thank you. JB, did you want to reflect on some of the hard truths? You know, this is the truth part of truth and reconciliation, and it's extremely important part of the healing journey that we're on together.
Yeah, one of the hard truths is that for our visitors, that they don't have title to everything. They still have a real colonial mindset, and it's most of the time it's enlightening for them to realize that yes, there is still some, not some, but there still is a lot of underlying colonial way of thinking, and it isn't until they meet knowledge holders like ourselves that they they begin to glimpse uh, at how much is actually still around.
Mm-hmm. So true. Now, I was talking yesterday, it seems to be so different on the way that we're answering these questions today is because we speak from our heart.
Mhm.
It's never ever written. We always just speak from our heart because whatever comes from here, it's always coming from a good place. It's coming from our heart to you and giving you the information that we know and the way that we know how to answer and so people will understand.
And one thing you said yesterday is that the tour is never the same because
No,
of that. And so someone can take the tour multiple times and keep deepening their learning, and that you're appreciative when people do the tour multiple times because they're showing their commitment to continue to learn.
that's so true. I had a doctor of the university that came back multiple times and he just wanted to sit and chat with me, but it was kind of interfering with my tours, and he'd sit there and wait until I came back, and then he'd come back the next day and he'd want more. So I appreciated that, but he was just like, okay, well, let's sit down and have a meeting, because coming back every day is interfering with my work space and time. So I did have to tell him, create time for me so I can teach you the ways of our people, but not on my business hours. Phone me and we'll do some meetings together.
There's a
So
lot
we
of
make
generosity there. There's a
mm-hmm.
lot of generosity to share and trust too, because many times when things are shared, people then take it and exploit it. And you might
That's
have
true.
a non-Indigenous tour operator out there, repeating the story of place. It's not their story
Oh,
to tell. And that's an important thing. And what we were talking about, the respect you have for one another's territory, and that's protocol that you do
mm-hmm.
um, to make sure that you're respecting the people whose territory in when you do venture into the territory of your neighbors. And then one of the kind of learning objectives we talked about wanting people to understand is that it isn't just one group of Indigenous people. It isn't just one language. There are many nations, and the cultures are complex and different from one another. And there's themes, there's similar landscapes. You're going to have similar similarities, but there's unique differences between each community that we have here in the region, and there's so much rich learning that people can do.
Yeah, it's not only the nations, it's the families. They have different cultures and you know, respecting the cultural ways. Also, our families may be similar in that way too, but they also have their own way of teaching their younger generation, especially in our home, our cultural home. We have those, like one family might think one way is right, but it's not right for us the way when I got put in the longhouse, which was 36 years ago, it was much more stricter but it was a stricter a strict way of living because they wanted me to learn. And when I learned, I got 6 elders that were with me through the whole winter. So I'm really, really grateful for that, because they said, now I am the one that's with, I'm teaching, I'm learning from the elders, and I'm bringing it back to the younger generation now. So that gives me that in between. I'm the bridge between the younger generation and the elders. So I love learning from our elders, and I love teaching the younger generations, the ones that will listen and want to have that thrive for the culture, thrive for Mother Earth, thrive for that. We say when we teaching, we're going to eat, because they say whatever you eat is you're absorbing the teaching also. So I just hope that for the younger generation that's coming up, that they're gonna want and be proud of who they are and where they come from. That's my goal in the end. You know, I just want our younger generation to be proud of who they are and where they come from, and know their lands and the boundaries.
There's an interesting question from an audience member, and they're talking about visiting territories in, in the prairies, very different. But there, one way to kind of show honoring and showing respect is through tobacco. Is there something similar in Wasanic territory and Lekwungen territory? Is there a way that people can show that respect? And is there a thing that is gifted, or how would you? And I'll ask you first, JB, especially as a plant guy. Is there a comparator to tobacco? How would you answer that question?
Um, Tobacco would be given, sweetgrass, sage, a plant we call gachmin.
Mhm.
In English, you know it as Indian consumption plants, cedar boughs, echoes, uh, a fungus that you can find on decaying logs and decaying stumps, eagle feathers, hawk feathers, owl feathers, depending on, not only depending on, well, yeah, um, food,
Mhm.
shawls, blankets, clothing, jewelry, baskets, canoes. It depends on the people and what they can reasonably afford. Because there's like the gift, and then there's the handshake, right? And the handshake is like paying for the services, so to speak.
Right.
And you want to make sure that that handshake is fair and not undervalued.
Mhm.
But on that same coin, you want to make sure that that handshake doesn't make you go poor.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. There is another question. Could you explain a little to help us understand what is the relationship between, someone's trying to understand Seo versus Wasanic, and also the relationship between Esquimalt and Songhees. So how about we'll start with Cecelia, and you can share a little bit about how are Songhees and Esquimalt related? And you use the word Lekwungen. Can you
Yeah.
help people understand?
Okay, before 1911, the two nations were one. The two nations were one nation, which was the Lekwungen people. It wasn't until the 1911 treaty that was rewritten again, because the first treaty was written in 1847. In 1847, they wrote the treaty, and they moved us to the main village site of the Delta that I was telling you about at the beginning. So when we moved there, they saw all of our plank homes. All of us Lekwungen people still stayed there. But because of the way that we lived, they did not like. So they moved us to the Squamalt Harbor, which is over on Maple Bank. And then that's when we split up into two nations because there wasn't enough space here in Maple Bank. So there was another space that was just across the bay, which was Squamish, and that was my great great grandfather's nephew that moved over there. And he moved, Sanupin, it was his name. And he moved over there and he brought his family to Squamish. And then he married the princess from Clahoose, and the princess from Clahoose married, there's two sisters that came down, and that was my grandmother and her sister, my namesake Cecelia, moved to Squamish Nation, and they married them off too. And my grandmother married the chief here, which was Hachi Dick. They were two high chiefs and two princesses that came from Clahoose and Songhees and Esquimalt. So
I've
that's a
worked with
little bit of history.
I've worked with you for 30 years and I'm still learning from you. And
Yeah,
it's wonderful to learn. So Songhees and Esquimalt share a language, share a history, and are related to one another.
closely related.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
continue to work closely together to this day. You've got multiple businesses you own together. And I know
Yeah,
when we
we
were
can't do
building,
one without the other, so to speak. When we're doing business, everything is connected to each other. So we always work together closely with the Esquimalt Nation. And we have partners that are in town here, and they're close partners, which business partners, I should say, that we work close with, and they have a good understanding. Now, I was just going to touch a little bit more on the protocols and the monetary giving. We still practice those teachings when people come into our territory. We do canoe protocol, or we have the two chiefs that come to welcome people into our territory. But there's an understanding to all of that. You're not just getting welcomed. There's an understanding to when you get welcomed by our chiefs that there's a respect of land, respect of people, and to respect everything that's around in our territories. Back then, if you did not do right by that, you were asked to leave, and the whole crew would be asked to leave our lands and territories, and they'd have to host a big potlatch to say sorry to our people and to our chiefs for not abiding by those rules. So those protocols are still in place. We share them with all nations because Victoria was the hub area for all of the nations to come to do their bartering. They bartered the Huitlao, which is the camas. They bartered the herring. They bartered some of the oils, like in our plants that they could not find in other areas. They would barter what they could, and they would come and share. But there's always an understanding when they came in that they were going to be going back home also. So there was a visitors area that was in Victoria where everybody went to go and stay because they weren't allowed to stay in the same side as the village of the Lekwungen people.
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Getting a
JB,
tour.
yeah, we're getting a tour right now.
Yeah.
JB, would you reflect on what it means with Sayote and how Sayote's part of Wasanic? Help people understand that relationship.
Advantage. Just a little bit of a correction on how you're pronouncing.
Kwasanich? Is there a sort of an XW? Like
Advantage.
Kwasanich?
It's a W sound at the very beginning of it, and it sounds more close to how our visitors say our name, because there is no place of Saanich. When the colonizers got here, they took our name of Saanich people and applied it to the territory where we live. and not only took our name as a people, but they anglicized it to Saanich. And us as Saanich people, we have 4 main village sites out on the Saanich Peninsula. We have my village site of Sayal. We have the village site of Chartlup in Brentwood Bay. And we have a village site of Bakwachin in Coal Bay. And we have a village site of Saikum in Patricia Bay. And the way that I pronounce these village site names, those are the proper ways to say our village site names. And I can say village site names because when we were forced onto our reserves, we were quite fortunate where we were forced. Were traditional village sites, whereas a lot of other nations they got forced out of their traditional village sites and were made to live elsewhere.
Yes. And I'm going to practice trying to say that correctly. It's I sat with Elmer George of Lekwungen, Songhees member Elmer George, who's a language holder of Lekwungen, and I just it's an exercise in humility to try to get your mouth to properly say these words, but I really appreciate you sharing, and I appreciate being corrected. It's important. I think sometimes people get like embarrassed when they get corrected, and no, it's a gift when someone corrects you. It means they care about you getting it right. So I appreciate that. The next question we have is, how can the tourism industry learn from your approach to sustainable tourism? Want to take that one first, Cecelia?
Yeah, for sure.
You've been involved in the Impact Tourism Conference for the last several years, talking about
yeah.
sustainable tourism, and they're really learning from you there. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm proud to be a part of that. And every year they come and ask me, and they bring panel along. And then when I'm listening to them, it kind of opens my eyes to some of the things that I've been taught and the way that I want to teach people also, because we are sustainable. We walk and we do canoe tours, and it's only geared towards manpower, right? So we're not using anything that's not going to damage the earth or the waters, because it's all manpower. And I always tell them, we have to be mindful of what's happening around us globally with the earth. And I always tell them, if we can start one step at a time, tiny little step, and learning about Mother Earth, even if they take a little bit of away of what's happening around the world, I say that it's going to help. I have many partners that are taking part in that, that 1% of helping Mother Earth and, giving back. So I always talk about how we have to protect her, Mother Earth, because, this is where we live. This is our home. This is, if we start, we're already destroying it. How do we start to fix her? Because she's given us clear indications that she's hurting, and yet we still keep clear cutting, building. This island used to be so luscious green before, but now it's dissipating with the old growth trees. Our waters are polluted, and we just did a study in town here, and it said not even 7 generations or the next 7 generations would our waters be. We would be able to harvest out of our own waters again because of the pollution that's in the waters. And when I'm riding out towards Souk, it's just sad because it's starting to clear cut out there now, and it's just bare where it wasn't before. And I just see so much changes, and it hurts my heart so badly because I want our next generations to see what our lands used to be like. So I always find that when I'm talking that I often talk about the past and present and the future, because I want our next generations to have something that's that they'll be proud to say that's theirs, not that's not getting destroyed. You know, we
Yeah.
have to take care of our Mother Earth. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you have thoughts to share about sustainable tourism, JB? I mean, yours is certainly very sustainable.
Um, well, yeah, I would just like to read or restate what I said earlier about how we are part of this ecosystem, and I do my best to try to educate and encourage people to not only understand that and acknowledge that, but make this place a better world than it was when we entered it. And how do we do that? We learn about history, we learn from history, we learn about environmental causes, and we do restoration work. We try, or I try to teach them to bring this knowledge forward rather than going back to this knowledge, and make this knowledge applicable for today. And when we use wording like that, it's we're able to keep moving forward, because it's very important to understand the power of language and the power of words. And one thing I would like to add to that is having people change it from excuse my ignorance to educate my ignorance. Because again, it's very important on how you word things.
Yes, that's right. Because excuse means let me keep being ignorant. And that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense. Yes,
So
totally
true.
agree. And there's a question in the chat, and they're putting me on the spot because I'm gonna have to try my pronunciation again. So this person is wanting to understand if they know if what they've heard is correct. So does Huasanit, did I say it correct? Does that mean people of the emerging land?
And people, the emerging people, and there's water in that translation. Pe- the emerging people of the water, and our name is actually attached to our sacred mountain. The proper name for it is Tlawanos. In English, you know it as Mount Newton or John Dean Park. Um, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. And Cecilia, this person is wondering if they're correct in believing that the Plungin means the place of smoked herring.
Yeah, people of the smoked herring. Yeah.
That's
It's
interesting.
funny because that's, that was one of the main bartering things that we used to barter. There's so many sites in Victoria that have these names that they did names to, like, for instance, Meakin. Meakin is actually a place to warm your belly. That's what it means. And that was
Beacon
our
Hill Park?
summertime home. Yeah, that was our summertime home. So when we went there, it was just a fun place, but it was also a place where we gathered our huitlao. The mothers would actually go and harvest the huitlao to barter with the people that come to visit us. So yeah, we named a lot of our places by the way what we did there or by the way it looked. Because there's one area just in Oak Bay area. I can't remember a traditional name for it, but it means big hips because it's shaped like big hips.
I remember you sharing that
Yeah.
before. It popped into my head just before you said it.
Yeah, I can't remember, but I'll try to.
Right after this, you will.
Mhm.
We have similar naming conventions too.
Yeah,
Um, we name things after how they look as well.
yeah.
Um, a lot of people think Sydney is named after some European captain named Sydney. No, they anglicized our name for that area or for this area. And that's Sitine. Sitine.
Ah.
And that translates to chest sticking out.
Oh,
Because
really?
and depending on the tide, it can look like a man's chest or a female chest.
Wow. I
That's
Yeah.
learned something today.
yeah, that's really cool.
Ah,
There's a question from an attendee about the gorge and herring in the gorge, and what can be done to bring herring back to the gorge. And Songhees is doing some work in that space,
yeah,
aren't
we are. We're actually practicing on laying the boughs down again because we do not use the kelp to harvest herring eggs. We use the pine bough
Mhm.
and lay them at the side of the stream there, and then we let the herring come and lay their eggs. But you know, like I said before, everything's dissipating. With all of our resources, there's so much that we've lost due to commercial fishing or just in general the way Mother Earth is now and the way she's being treated. It's just pretty sad because how do we get it back? That's the question. That's a question on many people's minds nowadays because it's hurting because the sun is at a high right now because what did it, I think it was about 2 years ago we had a gentleman that was a keynote speaker at the conference, and he was saying if we don't take care of Mother Earth now, we're in very critical stage of, burning up, so to speak. And I see that every year because it seems to be getting hotter and hotter here on the island. We used to be a place where it was nice to come to in the summertime because it wasn't as hot as they get in the Caribbeans. But now our waters are even getting warmer, so it makes it that much harder for the salmon to come back because of our waters being warm. Our salmons are at a very, very low critical stage also. So we just have to, I keep praying to Mother Earth, praying to God and asking to help heal Mother Earth. I pray for everything, but yeah.
And that kind of lends to the next question is how can guests contribute to the work that you do?
Be mindful. Be mindful of your areas, the location that you're at, and that we are different. Like JB is Hispanic. I almost want to say Hispanic, and I'm Lekwungen. We are different people. We're different nations. Be mindful of in the area that you're in and taking care. Don't leave anything out. our grandparents always said, only take what you need, never overabundance yourself on anything. I always leave the place like you, when you came, like JB was saying. We have to be mindful every time that we're walking on Mother Earth, and you know, she's precious to us. We're only the caretakers of these lands.
Mhm.
We don't own. We just take care. And I'm mindful of that every time I walk in the mountains, into the forest. I teach the kids to touch the trees and say, this is alive. I said, feel the tree. You can feel how alive it is. I said, it's talking to you. I tell this to the little kids, so they're mindful that everything's alive when they're in the forest with me. I give them a little nature walk, and I teach them about the beach and the dangers of the water, and when they're allowed to be at the beach and when they're not allowed to be at the beach. It's so important to keep everything in mind, especially when kids are so freely out there nowadays. And I'll say, you can't go down the beach right now. It's too dangerous because of the winds and the waters, the waves and everything. I tell them, but when it's nice and low tide, I give them a chance to feel, touch the little crabs and touch the seaweed, just having the feel of Mother Earth and letting them learn about it. That's my point of view.
Thank you.
Hmm.
What are your thoughts, JB, on how guests can contribute, how they should carry themselves when they're
Walk,
participating?
well, um, walk gently, like Cecelia was just sharing. And I would add, uh, grow these native plants in what we consider conventional gardens. And change yourself from an ally to an accomplice to help heal. Make this place a better place than it was when you entered it. Because that's a very common thread in a lot of our Indigenous teachings, is to not only leave this place as we found it, but leave it better than when we found it. So that it's not only just there for us, but it's there for the generations that come after.
Yeah.
Yeah. Someone made a comment about the importance of preserving and restoring eelgrass. And I think the nations are, I mean, that's herring like to live among eelgrass too, don't they?
It did, yes.
Important
Yeah.
ecosystem,
Yeah.
important species.
Very important. That's one of the other ones that have become dissipating through the years, but here in the harbors of Guamo, um, just out at the lighthouse, Fisgard Lighthouse, we had herring that came back, and we had not seen herring come back in this area for generations. Um, Probably since my dad's generation that we haven't saw them come back. And then just last year they had a big herring spawning just out at Fisgard Lighthouse. So that just goes to show that when they did the derelict um, ship cleaning and the cleaning of these waters, that the fish found it, that they could come back here. So I'm really grateful for that when it did happen, because it it gave us hope that this is happening again.
Yeah.
And we have never seen our Kukwanawa come in these waters before. And not in my lifetime. These past 2 years, we've seen killer whales coming into the harbor here, and it's amazing. And we even saw 4 already this year that came into these waters. And I'm just like, wow, they're really coming back. So that means that there is salmon coming back into these waters, and I'm really grateful for that because they wouldn't be coming in here just to come.
The so there's a question about challenges. What challenges that you face as you're building a tourism business?
Mine is oh God. Younger generation, teenagers, young adults. They have their own mindset. I have some really cool younger generations that want to be there, but not enough. You know, some of them are very shy, very shy, and they don't like to public speak. And that's my challenge is because when they come and be a part of my team, it's learning to be proud of yourself, proud of your nation, proud of yourself, proud of your family that you come from. And if you have a traditional name, I want you to announce it because that's part of you. So I ask them to just say Aitzquecho, Asa Holat, Chaasun at Lakongin. So what I'm saying is good day, my honored friends. My traditional name is Flat and I'm from the Lakongin territories. So this is what I'm teaching the younger generation. They have to come and do language class with me, but some of them are very reluctant in that. And once they heard that they had to speak the language and speak to people, it kind of made them shy away from the tourism business because they didn't want to speak publicly. So those are my challenges right now that I face, but I do have some that are returning back that have actually made a difference in their life. And one of them is going to university next year. She's graduating this year and she wants to do the language revitalization program and she wants to be a language teacher in the end. So she's already picked her path and I'm so proud of her because it's made that one person, and I was hoping that one person would grasp something, and it did, and now it's given me hope to keep carrying on. That's why I don't leave tourism, because that one person has made that difference, and it showed me that the young boys are willing to step up and start singing because one at the beginning of the year he was just like drumming, oh, hey. By the end of the year he was like, oh, hey. He was just singing really loud and that was the Lekwungen celebration song. And it made me proud that he wasn't shy anymore to open up and share these songs with the people that were on the tour with us. He was willing to share. So it gives me hope. Like I said, I have some rock stars that are really out there and they're willing to be a part of this and they want to thrive in tourism. So as I just keep crossing my fingers that I get more that want to be a part of it.
Yeah, because building a product in this
Hmm.
in this context, this is about knowledge transfer, language revitalization, the healing of communities from the destructive forces of colonialism and residential schools, and this runs really deep, these themes.
Yes, for sure. I'm I'm a product of residential school. My parents were part of residential school. My father was day school. My mother is even a part of TB hospitals that took her from the residential school, brought her to the TB hospital, and she got pushed out at the age of 21. And they told her she was better. And they didn't even teach her part of life because she went in there when she was 8. She come out when she was 21, and they said, "You're all better," and just pushed her out the door and said, "You'll never have any kids." And here she had 8 of us. That just goes to show, we couldn't find out what they did to her because they burnt all of the records, her health records. In the end, these are some of those hard truths that we talk about too, is how we're healing ourselves too, because we need to get these stories out there. Even if our parents aren't here anymore, it is still part of their history.
Yeah, that's the Nanaimo Indian Hospital.
Yes, the Nanaimo TB
Yeah.
hospital is where she was at. And it was because her sister had TB. So they said at residential school, because she was at Keeper Island, they said, oh, well, if she has it, her sister must have it. So they took them both out of the residential school and they brought them over to the Nanaimo TB hospital. And they didn't even tell her father. So for a whole year and a half, he was trying to look for his daughters. And finally, my aunt Rose actually they got to write to their dad to tell him where they were at. And it was pretty sad, they stayed there for so long. They didn't even have a chance to write to their parents to tell them where they were at. Oh,
It
heartbreaking.
is heartbreaking and so important for people to know about. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
JB, do you want to reflect on any of the themes that have emerged there? We're kind of coming to a close of our time. I'd just like to give you an opportunity to share anything you feel called to share at this time.
Um, yeah, I would just like to add that all of our knowledge is valid. We're so much more intelligent than our visitors give us credit for, and we are so much richer than what people believe. Because you do not colonize a people if they're poor.
Mm-hmm.
You do not take their things if they're poor. Yeah.
That's really important. And indigenous tourism is one way to show the riches, the tremendous wealth
Mm-hmm.
in knowledge and wisdom. And that I think that came up, we were talking about climate change, and it's like our world needs indigenous knowledge for our very survival at
That's
this
right.
point. To learn to be in right relationship with this earth is a
Sure,
matter of survival.
I wish I remembered that man's name because he said we should have been learning from the indigenous people all along because we wouldn't be in the place that we are today if we listened to them and how to take care of the earth. That
Yeah.
was his final words is when he finished off, and it impacted my way of looking and saying, I always go back to his sayings because you know what, that really hit me. you know, we have to really, really be mindful. And I'm really thankful that people have asked these questions. It's not easy asking Indigenous people questions. And I'm really thankful that you had a chance to ask these questions because you wouldn't have known if you didn't ask. And that's what we're here for as knowledge keepers. And we're always learning. I'm not saying I know it all. We learn every day. My heart is always open to anybody that wants to share teachings. And 6 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to talk my language because we were at a 1 percentile of losing our language altogether. And then now we have about 40% of our people that want to learn the language again. And when you start learning about the language, it opens your eyes even more to different ways of looking at the earth too, because it means so much more than the English language. Our our words are emphasized in the way that we say it too. When we go and say that when we say we love you, we really, really love you because it comes straight from our heart. It's not just a word. It means that we do really love you and we love Mother Earth. Well, I do. I'm speaking for myself. I love Mother Earth and I just want to be sure that we can take care of her.
Wonderful. I thank you both so much for sharing today, for your generosity to share. And I'd like to tell the audience that you can find these two businesses on the South Island Indigenous Business Directory. And I encourage you to go to that directory and hire from those businesses that are on there these are acts of economic reconciliation to support
Mm,
Indigenous business. And I encourage everybody to do that. And I hope to see you both at the Indigenous Business Mixer and at the workshop on Indigenous tourism. We want to come together and see how we can support one another in
For
your
sure.
business development. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Heichka, Christina. And Taryn, thank you for reaching out to me, my niece. Heichka, Siam.
Thank you for inviting me into this space.
Thank
Nice
you,
to meet you,
JB.
JB.
It's a pleasure to
Nice
meet
to
you.
meet you as well.
All right. I
You
look
have a
forward to
good
your
day.
tour. You too.
Mm.
Thank you.
Haikwa.
Haikwa.